There we are. We're live.
Uh,
All right. We
the
are
game they
live.
play.
Yes, we are live with Alexander Mercurs in London, and we are very happy to have with us the first time on the Duran, Stanislav Krapivnik. Stanislav, welcome to Duran. How are you doing, and where can people find you?
Thank you. Doing good. Glad we could get on. I guess they're now blocking Moscow. They weren't before. I can be found. I've got a channel called Mr. Slavic Man, all one word with a K instead of a C, on YouTube, and I've got two Telegram channels. Stas was there. It's the English language one. И Stas туда и обратно is the Russian language one.
All right, and I will have those links in the description box down below and as a pinned comment as well when the live stream is over. So a quick shout out to everybody that is watching us on Odyssey, on Rockfin, Rumble, YouTube, and our awesome Duran community on locals, the Duran.locals.com. And thank you to our moderators, Peter. Thank you very much. Zariel, thank you as well. And all right, to Peter, Zariel, thank you for moderating. Alexander, Stanislav, let's talk about what's going on in Ukraine.
Let's indeed, and let's go straight in, because I should say that Stanislav has a hard stop, so we need to move quickly because he's somebody who can bring us an awful lot of information and an awful lot of descriptions of the situation on the front lines, and also about the humanitarian realities of this war, which I noticed that Donald Trump talks about, but no other Western politician ever does, which is really quite remarkable. So, Stanislav, you are, if I could say, you've got contacts in the area. You are closer to it. You could tell us a little bit about what the situation in the area and the battle areas are like, and you could give us some sense of what's going on there.
Well, yeah, by birth I'm from Lugansk. That's my birth city. So yeah, I got connections. I had the unfortunate news to find out 2 days ago that my uncle passed. He and my aunt, elderly aunt, they live in Yasanovata, which is the front lines for all intents and purposes. They get artillery attacked on a constant basis every day. I've been there. We're delivering humanitarian and military help for the guys' medical help in Gorlovka, and then drove from Gorlovka to Yasanovata. And one of the reasons he died was because he couldn't make it to the hospital to get treated for his cancer in Gorlovka, which the VSU, they continue bombing that hospital area, knocking out electricity, keeps getting rebooted. The guys that are just absolute heroes are the people the utility workers who go out there under fire, the medical people. But it's about a 20-kilometer drive, not much. But when you have artillery coming in behind you and in front of you, and you can hear it flying overhead. And that's not even that bad, because you're doing 150 kilometers an hour down this bombed out road. It's still not that bad as opposed to the drones. The drones that can accelerate up to 200 kilometers an hour. And that's the big one. And the Ukrainians will hit anything that moves. I mean, they'll go after military equipment when they can. But since that, anything that moves is a good target. And a lot of people won't take that drive, taxi drivers and so on. So unfortunately, he couldn't get the medical help. And then in the city, stood there in Yasanovata is a small town. It's been getting shelled for 11 years now. Now, before the SMO, most of the shelling was by the Ukrainians when they get drunk. They get drunk, shoot off a few rounds into the city, wherever it pops, it pops. After that, it became a lot more vengeful. There aren't really many military targets in that area, but there are lots of civilian houses. And, standing there talking to my uncle a year ago, and you're hearing rounds flying in overhead, hitting somewhere in the city. I'm former military, so it's that's not as big of a shock for me. But people who haven't experienced that, one of the guys that was with us, he was scared out of his mind. He's hearing artillery flying overhead, and these people are used to it. It's a horrible thing to be used to, but they're used to it. The neighbor across the street from my aunt got killed 4 months ago. This was like a second or third hit on her house. Another house where they had two hits come in. My aunt's got shell holes in her yard, and they won't leave. They're old people. They refuse to leave. I said, we'll drive you out, but where are we going to go? We won't leave. This is our house. We've got animals here, and so on. And they stayed. But the thing that got me the most, I spent 11 years in the U.S. Army. I came out as a captain promotable, refused major's rank, and a good part of that, the reason I refused major's rank, because in '99 I was in the 18th Airborne Corps headquarters. I was part of G3, and all the scenarios that were being run for war with Russia. It's like that shock when you start seeing the bigger picture. You don't really see it at brigade level. You don't see it at battalion level. You don't see it at company level, but you see it at the big picture, at corps level. And then you see that it never stopped. The planning, the work to the thing is, I guess up to '99, Russia was killing itself pretty well. So the planning was still going on, but it was kind of those, we won't need to do this. And then after '99, Vladimir Vladimirovich started putting Russia back on its feet. Things got, I guess, a little more intense. But the U.S. was still bogged down in the Middle East and Afghanistan. But things were going, and they were going in the direction that they were going. The Georgian Maidan, the Ukrainian Maidan, and so on. And I was a military advisor in Georgia for a UN mission there. And I knew the guys that were preparing the U.S. prepared brigades in Georgia. And they were getting ideologically correct people that would then go into Southeast Asia and massacre the population there. They got wiped out in the counterattack, but these people were prepared. So this whole thing was always rolling, step at a time, was still rolling forward. Once I figured out Russia wasn't going to self-immolate. But so now you've got what you've got. You've got Gorlovka, which is under attack for 11 years. The front's moved back some, but there's still artillery rounds coming in. We came in there to a humanitarian storeroom. We're giving people donated, kids' toys, clothes, things like that. Because people are losing their houses, they're losing everything. If they're lucky, they survive with their skin intact. They still lost everything. And then you can hear the cassette rounds coming in about half a kilometer away, and the pop 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 as the rounds are exploding in the air. And this is everyday life for these people, and this is how they live, because the Ukrainians, number one, they have been targeting, and by Ukrainians I also mean the mercenaries sitting behind the HIMARS, because they're not Ukrainian soldiers on the HIMARS platforms, are targeting civilians. Even when they're out of rounds to engage in combat, somehow they still keep enough rounds to shoot at civilians. So that's the situation from the humanitarian side.
Which I would point out is consistent with what we've also been hearing from Patrick Lancaster, the Canadian reporter who goes regularly to the battlefronts. And it's an aspect of the war that never gets talked about. Can I just quickly discuss a few of the events that have happened on the battlefronts? Because over the last couple of weeks, we've had a number of changes. Toretsk, Dzerzhinsk, as I know it's also called, has now come under Russian control. That does move the front line a bit further from Gorlovka, or so it seems to me. We got reports, I think yesterday or the day before yesterday, that Belogorovka, which is close to Lugansk, where you were born, that has also now come under Russian control, and apparently a big slag heap there. Are we starting to see a situation where the front line is significantly moving away from the cities? Because again, if you follow Patrick Lancaster, that seems to have happened to some extent.
American Alexander, by the way. Patrick Lancaster, American reporter. You said Canadian by mistake.
Canadian. I'm so sorry.
Go on.
But Patrick tells us that in Donetsk city, things have considerably lessened now, with Avdiivka, all of those places having been captured. But do you think this is going to change now in Gorlovka, Lugansk, now that the front line has moved back?
I'll rib Patrick next time I talk to him that he's Canadian. That whole area, that whole Donbas area. So Donbas means the base of the Don River, and that area is, in the 1920s, before early 1920s, 1900s, there were posters. The Donbas is the heart of Russia, because that was Russian land before Lenin created the modern Ukraine. Nobody asked the people there whether they wanted to become, quote, Ukrainian. They didn't even know what the hell a Ukrainian was, let alone Ukrainian language and all of that. They were forced Ukrainized. But that whole region in the Donbas is just a gigantic, nonstop conglomeration of towns, villages, and cities. So Donetsk, you've got Donetsk, and then on and on and on from Donetsk. It's like American urban sprawl for those who have been driving in America. It just never ends. It just keeps going. The town names change, but it's just one mass urban sprawl. And this whole area is like that. The reason the war has been going so slowly, one, Russia is trying to conserve manpower and not waste it. And there were issues at the beginning of the war. There weren't enough soldiers. That's true too. That's not an issue anymore. The issue is, instead of throwing body waves away, the point is to bear the enemy down with heavy artillery, with aviation bombs, and then come in and clean him up when he's no longer capable. If he's going to continue shoving in resources, you continue destroying resources and just wait, slowly taking territory. The same thing that happened in Artyomovsk, Bakhmut. There was almost 80,000 Ukrainian troops that were destroyed in that town. Now, that was a little bit different because the Wagner guys were actually using a lot of body waves. They were using conscripts, for which they were no longer allowed to recruit conscripts. That was a slightly different issue. But in the other areas, it's very strictly being held as conserve manpower. We don't waste our people's lives. We waste the enemy's lives. And that's the aim of it. And the same thing that's happening in Kursk right now. The reason Kursk hasn't been closed is it's a perfect trap. On a strategic level, this is a great trap. The only unfortunate part is there was a segment of the population that could not be evacuated in time. Most of those were, again, old people that refused to leave. It was a perfect trap, perfect balance, if you think about it, where you kept just enough troops to make it look like there's troops on the border, but not enough to hinder them, to make it a weak spot. And you have to keep enough troops in the back still dispersed so the enemy couldn't get too far. Now, most of the troops that came into Kursk, they were either from the deep reserve, and it's hard to find them because they're spread out. Ukraine's not a small country. They're in the deep. You're not going to hit them with aviation because they still do have some amount of anti-aircraft, so trying to find them is difficult. And on the flip side, they also took a lot of the experienced troops that they were using as mobile fire brigades to close up gaps in the front, on the eastern front. And they shoved it all into this great thing called a kill sack. You basically, it's a great Ukrainian tradition to run into a cauldron and stick themselves in there and sit there much longer than they should have ever been there. So right now, Kursk is being pushed from every direction, but it's not being closed because it's a trap that keeps on sucking more Ukrainian reserves. You got to keep the pressure on to keep the numbers falling, and to keep the political pressure on that they have to keep putting in more and more reserves. But they're getting hit from every direction, quite literally 360, because their supply lines that are walking into Kursk are also within rocket artillery, heavy artillery, rocket fire, and aviation bombs down one major supply avenue. And the drones, the new drones on the fiber optic lines are going up to 40 kilometers deep. So that was a very big surprise in northern Sumy region, where the VSU was used to driving without much tactical issues, and suddenly they started getting hit in every direction on the roads. So everything is there to destroy the enemy. I'm not saying that there aren't casualties. Of course, there are casualties still being taken, and that's something that society here has done a lot. People put packages together. They buy medical equipment additional for the hospitals. Just civilian volunteers. I'd say maybe up to 1 million people are actively either gathering supplies from other people that are donating or delivering supplies. I've been down there quite a few times, not as many as I'd like for one reason or another, but quite a few times. Getting ready to go down soon again. We take cars down there. There's certain cars like the Patriot, which is a Jeep that works well, that people donate or buy and hand over. So society, the majority of society is standing very firmly, closed ranks behind. And the more videos of what the VSU and what these mercs were doing in different towns, and Kursk is not an exception. Kursk is maybe a bit worse than other areas, because there's no question anybody in Kursk is Russian. In other areas, as they're stepping away, they are murdering any civilians that are left. Because the mindset is, if you didn't retreat, then you're pro-Russian, which means you're Russian, and yeah, we'll just kill you. And that's the standard operating procedure that the Ukrainian army has been using almost from day one. Now that these conglomerations are being broken through, if you look at historically, 1944, beginning 1944 was the same thing. The breakthrough from Eastern Ukraine was slow, but once that was broken through, granted, Stalin didn't have as many issues of using men up as we do now. But once that German line of defense, which wasn't nearly as prepared as this line of defense was, this is a line that they were preparing for over 10 years, 8 to 10 years. And the secondary lines for 2 years plus. I mean, pouring insane amounts of concrete. But once these lines are burst through, there's no place to hide. There's no place to hold. Right up to the Dnieper, and actually even after the Dnieper River on the other side, it goes on basically the same way. Outside of a few major cities, you've got villages here and there, but okay, you make a small isolated strong point, you just go around it, take care of it later. So that once this line is breached, they're going to have very, very big problems. And once Pokrovsk goes, or Krasnoarmeysk, once that goes, that northeastern portion of the front is gone, because that is the main supply line. Now, southward, the supply line's already cut. The rail lines are already in Russian hands. And as it is already getting supplies into Pokrovsk is dangerous, because it's within heavy artillery and aviation range. So it starts to attrit that logistic chain from Dnipropetrovsk. The northeast, like I said, once that portion's cut off, it's over for them. Their supply lines are cut, and they're going to be forced to start retreating toward Kharkov, the city of Kharkov, as a supply base. Because in the end, it doesn't matter how good your tactics are, it doesn't matter how good your equipment is. If you don't have fuel and bullets and food, you got one of two choices: die in place or surrender.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's interesting you said all of this because. Hello.
Yeah.
There's an echo.
I hear you.
Okay, right.
There's an echo, Alexander.
Not on my side, I think.
I hear everything fine.
You're fine?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're fine?
Go.
Yeah.
Okay. Very, very brief. The comparison I've made about Donbas is that it is like the Ruhr in Germany, which I know quite well. Very dense area of factories, small towns, exactly the kind of urban and industrial.
No, there is an echo.
Yeah.
I think it's coming from your speaker.
My speaker.
Yeah.
What can I say? Can I go out and come in again? Yeah.
Mine?
Hello, can you hear me now? Perfect. Okay. Hello.
No, you have an echo.
I can't explain. I suggest you were saying some very interesting things. So just tell us about the negotiations and where you think that is going. Because clearly there's problems with my microphone.
Well, negotiations. There's something to consider with negotiations too. First of all, the West. There's a tendency in the West to view Vladimir Vladimirovich as some kind of dictator that does whatever he wants, when he wants, how he wants. The Putin can do whatever he wants. Well, he can't, and that's the issue. He is bound. He is a lawyer. He is bound constitutionally by what he can and cannot do. And part of that, by the way, is Kherson. Kherson happens to be on the other side of the Dnieper. Russia cannot, by Russian constitution, give up a single square centimeter of land. That's considered part of Russia. So no negotiations will proceed anywhere unless the entirety of the four new old oblasts are part of the Russian Federation. So that could be a partial stumbling block. Another issue in this is that I honestly, as a military person, I don't see the conflict ending anytime soon for several reasons. Even if we take, as long as there's somebody firing, the conflict's obviously not over. So even if the front collapses and everything goes up to the Dnieper River, well, the Dnieper is not that wide. It's wide, but it's not that wide. Artillery definitely will breach it. So Russia has this problem. Anybody that's east of the Dnieper River now becomes Russian citizens, right? Well, what happens when the Russian citizens, the new Russian citizens, or the old Russians, are being shelled, or have terrorists coming across the river in parties and destroying or assassinating, murdering? Well, you have to do something to control that. The problem is the war continues until you reach a party that doesn't want to fight. So now parts of Kharkov or Lugansk are now strictly Russia, but you're getting artillery from Kharkov. So you got to take Kharkov to stop it. Now the people in Kharkov are Russian citizens. They're getting shot at from Sumy, or Chernigov, or from Kiev. What do you got to do? You got to take those areas to stop it. Now those people are being shot at. And again, this becomes a domino effect. Either you reach a party that no longer wants to fight or never wanted to fight, or you continue this rolling fight till it stops, because there's no going back for Russia. This is absolutely, from day one, it's been said, and it is absolutely an existential crisis. This is a point of either we survive or we'll take the world with us, because if we don't stop this now, there won't be a Russia. And by the way, for those who think that they can split Russia up into little ethnic groups, while there's 180 different ethnic groups in Russia, maybe more. And that's native to Russia. That's not counting the Germans, Italians, and others who have immigrated over time into Russia. Russians, or those who identify ethnically as Russians, are the majority in almost every single territory. And they're not getting ready to split the country up in any direction and leave. Except maybe the liberals in Yekaterinburg. I'll get some hate mail for that one. But other than that, so the country is basically on a stable block. 82% of the population self-identifies as Russian, ethnically Russian. Everybody else identifies as Russian in a big sense of Russian. The majority of the population is one religious group, whether or not they go to church, or they do go to church. It's a different area. But Orthodoxy is also part of the culture. I'm not saying that Muslims aren't a large percentage, about 12%, but it all goes under one big umbrella of Orthodox culture. And that keeps the country together. It's not split like, say, a Protestant Catholic country may be split, where it's a radically different religion going down an actual border between counties. So it's not in any direction that it's heading that it's going to collapse. And any dream of collapse from the West is a pipe dream. And no, the light coming down at the end of the tunnel is probably the freight train of the Russian army. So best to take a different fork, but they don't seem to want to take a different fork. So from my view, to make it shorter, and I won't rant, Trump's doing a lot to actually get America out of this war, whether it's because he wants to fully get America out of the war, or he wants to get money back, put it all on the Europeans, and then sell the Europeans equipment and make money off of while sitting back and watching the Europeans fight. I don't know. But the Europeans, especially with Merz now, the future chancellor of Germany, you've got the three stooges between Starmer, Macron, and Merz. And I don't see anything good happening. I mean, it'd be funny in its own way if it wasn't such tragic. Parallel, so many lives are going to be lost because of these three people. And they're going to do everything they can to either sabotage any attempts at peace or just to ignore them altogether and continue the conflict. And I think the U.S., for the most part, if it's making a lot of money off of this, it's going to go, well, we're neutral. We'll sit back. We know our ships are not going to get submarined. Torpedoed because Russia's not going to bring a big war in. But if the rest of the Europeans get in a big war, you know, Marshall Plan too. We get rid of our debts to Europe. We give out credits and rebuild Europe, and we get rich and we suck it dry.
All right, Stanislav. One sec. Guys, 1 sec. Okay. All right. The echo's coming from Stanislav. It's an echo that's coming through your mic, Stanislav. So what I'll do is I'll have you mute. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I'll mute you before, and then when you speak, I'll unmute you. So Alexander, unmute yourself, and you can ask the question. Then I'll unmute you, Stanislav, when you need to answer.
Right. The question I wanted to ask is this, because Vladimir Putin actually gave a very interesting interview yesterday to Pavel Zarubin, one of his favorite journalists, one of the most interesting interviews he's given, in my opinion, and it's not getting the attention that it deserves. Because he talked about negotiations, and he talked about what Donald Trump is trying to do. And he said that Donald Trump is trying to save Ukraine. That, in fact, it might not be in Russia's interests that Trump succeeds, and that the major problem that Donald Trump has is the fact that Zelensky remains president of Ukraine. Zelensky is going to stop any attempt at negotiations. And from Trump's point of view, it would be a good thing if Zelensky could be removed. It might not be such a good thing from Russia's point of view, because Zelensky is an irrational leader who makes absurd military decisions, the Kursk operation obviously being one. And of course, the longer he stays, the more likely it is that Ukraine, at least in its present form, will cease to exist. It was a very, very interesting interview, one that, as I said, Putin revealed an awful lot more about his thinking that he has done in the past. What did you make of that?
Well, it's hard to say. Ukraine, the way it is now, obviously can't exist. First of all, let's begin with the fact Ukraine is an artificial entity. And the interesting thing is, a lot of people in even the Western Donetsk Oblast that have been living under Ukrainian rule to some degree, or better yet, in Zaporozhye and Kherson, were shocked when the Ukrainian army started shelling them. But wait a minute, aren't we the same? Just because the Russians are here. But no, you're not the same, and that's the problem. The people in Dnipropetrovsk look at the people in Donbas as, you're not Ukrainian, you're Russians. The people in Ivano-Frankivsk look at the people in Dnipropetrovsk and say, no, you're Russians, you're not us. The people sitting in Lvov look at the people further east and go, you're all Katsats, you're not us. The people sitting in Galicia look at the people in Lvov and go, you're some subhumans, you're not us. So it's an artificial entity that really never coincides into any kind of culture, per se, country. And it never had a time, and since it was artificially put together, it couldn't. So now you're looking at an issue of what type of Ukraine needs to be left. Honestly speaking, if the Hungarians, Romanians, Moldovians, Slovakians, and Poles came in and took their chunks out of the Western Ukraine, that would not be against Russia's interests. In fact, it would be very much in Russia's interest. The problem for the Poles, in particularly, a lot of those territories that they claim, and they have a lot of old property bills they've been suing over, the people have been murdered off during World War II or expunged. out of those areas, they want those lands back, obviously. I mean, they go down to which apartment belonged to which family. And they're being, Ukraine was being sued for that. There's large parties in Poland, even though the Duda may be kowtowing at the moment toward Ukraine, though it seems to be less and less of a mask that he wants to wear. The majority of the Polish population and the Poles that I speak with, they're not interested in any kind of friendship with Ukraine. They want Rzecz Pospolita Part 2, the Polish Empire back, Mora da More. So that's they're looking at those areas. The problem for them is, of course, is the male Ukrainian population that's in those areas. About a third of the population have what's called Polish cards, which is basically a Polish green card. They're recognized as ethnically Poles or partially Poles. They speak some amount of Polish language, and they can live in Poland anytime they want. The Poles are giving out a lot of that, just like the Hungarians are giving out Hungarian citizenship to a lot of people in Zakarpattia, where almost half the population has Hungarian citizenship on top of that. So now the problem is what to do with the rest of the Ukrainian men, because the most radical nationalists happen to be in those areas. And I'm not excusing Bandera. Bandera was a Nazi murderer, but Bandera didn't, the hatred, that level of hatred of Bandera una Unze didn't come from just thin air. It came from being under Polish rule, where they were forced Polonized, forced Catholized, and so on. So again, there was a foundation that both sides hate each other. But for the Poles, the Polish government should do what do you do with the Ukrainian men? Okay, the children you can re-educate into future Poles. The women you can make future Poles. What do you do with the men? Well, you know, if you can utilize them on the Eastern Front against the Russians, it's all the better. And that seems to be a lot of what they're doing. So the next question, there's been rumors flying around. Don't know if it'll become truth or not. But the next question is, are the Poles going to take over recruiting? Because Zelensky literally has almost 100,000 troops spread out in all these little villages and towns and cities, grabbing press gang, the press gang people. They're grabbing people off the streets. Those that can't pay enough, they grab, and that's why they let people videotape, by the way. That's commercial. You know, look what's going to happen to you unless you bring us money. See that guy we just beat the crap out of and threw into a van? And he's going to be dead on the front lines in 2 weeks? Yeah, bring your money. We'll give you a white card to excuse you. But that's becoming harder and harder to do. And more than a few of these guys in the press gangs have been getting pushed to the front lines now. There was even an incident in one of the POW camps here in Russia where two press gang POWs met their press ganger, and they literally almost beat him to death before the guards were able to separate him out. So that's another issue. But if you want really effective press ganging, you got to bring a third party that has absolutely no relatives living there, that has no family that can be targeted by very angry relatives like people they press gang. And the Poles happen to be an excellent choice for that. So will that happen? I don't know. But the Poles have already been used as blocking forces and executed Ukrainians retreating on more than one occasion. So which way this will go, I have no idea. Have a call that is disrupting. I'm sorry, I got a call that's breaking.
Trump says, fine, send peacekeepers to Ukraine. I think Trump's, the way he's saying it, at least my read is that Trump is saying, go ahead. Don't bother us about it.
Exactly.
It's not our problem,
Exactly.
man. He's telling
Exactly.
Macron, you want to send peacekeepers? Go ahead and send peacekeepers. Who am I to tell you no? But you're not going to see the U.S. Getting involved. I mean,
Exactly.
Stanislav, you can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, great.
I fully agree.
Okay, awesome. I think we have how much time do we have, Stanislav, before you have to leave?
I can do another about 6-7 minutes.
Okay.
Stanislav, let's get Stanislav in for another 5-6 minutes, and
well, absolutely. We were talking about negotiations. We were talking about the fact that Donald Trump and Putin seem to be working towards a normalization of relations between the United States and Russia. That completely reverses if it's taken through all that thing that you noticed way back in 1999, when the neocons were in their pomp, by the way, which was preparing for war with Russia. Do you think this can work? Do you think that this is going to happen? I mean, what is the sentiment in Moscow at the moment? Are people in Russia interested in any kind of concessions on the Russian side to end the war in Ukraine? Because I got the sense, listening to Putin and Lavrov yesterday, that the answer is no. They're not going to make any concessions at all.
Are people interested in peace? Of course, people are interested in peace. The majority of people want peace. Are they interested in concessions? Absolutely no. Russia's made the view on the street for most people is no more concessions. Russia's made plenty of concessions before. The Istanbul Accords was probably the last go around for concessions period. All stop on that because we saw what happened when the Russian army, in a gest of goodwill, pulled out of Kiev Oblast and pulled out of Sumy Oblast. You got Bucha, which was the massacre of pro-Russian civilians that was then blamed on Russia. 3 days, by the way, after the Russian army pulled out, because the mayor in Bucha ran that the first day, said, yes, they've left, everything's good, everybody's back to normal. And then on the third day, oh, we have a massacre here. Oh, well, hey, somehow we didn't notice that. So no, the people are not interested. After Erdogan allowed the heads of Azov to leave, even though they're supposed to have been there in exile to the end of the conflict, it's become obvious there really aren't anybody. There's almost no one, and there are no organizations in the West that can be trusted. You've got Orban, you've got Fico. And they're looking after their own countries, which is the right thing to do, which is normal. But, you can negotiate with people that are looking after the interests of their countries because you can figure out what the interests of their countries are. And then you can work with them on that. When people don't care about the interests of their countries, but care about some globalist utopian idea or some such, it's much more difficult to deal with. So for most Russians, no, there is no big interest in any kind of concessions. Of course, they want peace. They want it over, but not at the cost of having it spark up in another 2-3 years, or having the West trying to outweigh it, Putin, and then start a new war, and knowing that there's going to be terrorism. The VSU, the SBU, which are the worst ones, the SBU that were created, this terrorist organization, the formerly intelligence organization, was created by, as we were all told by the New York Times, by the CIA and by MI6 into a terrorist organization. They haven't gone away. And unless they're dismantled and destroyed, there's no prospects for a long-term peace, an actual peace.
What do Russians feel about the United States and the initiatives coming from Donald Trump at the moment? Is there cynicism about them or optimism? This is my last question, by the way.
For Russians, that may be one and the same. Cynicism and optimism. They can coexist in the Russian soul. There's a lot of things that can coexist in the Russian soul. So on the one hand, people want to believe, but on the other hand, people have been burnt so many times, so they're very, very cautious. As far as Western culture, the vast majority don't want it. Russia has a liberal disease also. But this conflict has gone a long way to cauterizing that liberal disease. So when they look at the West as a cultural entity, no, nobody wants it. Thank you. You can keep it. You can do whatever you want to each other in your own countries. We don't want it. Don't bring it in here. As far as investment and companies, sure, in some market areas it wouldn't be a bad thing. But a lot of market holes, sanctions are like when you tell your children, I'm going to punish you. Until they know what the punishment is, it's a lot scarier than until they find out, oh, I get spanked twice or I get put in a timeout chair or whatever. That's actually not that bad. The same thing with the sanctions. Everybody feared the sanction until the sanctions came. And then the next day, everyone looked around and said, well, the house hasn't burnt down. The stores aren't empty. So the sky isn't falling. Okay, I think we can live with this. And then as it got better and better, and Russian companies came in to take up the market lagged. The Chinese came in more fully, other countries' companies. They say, okay, yeah, it turns out we can actually live quite well without the West. So the West, from one side, yeah, investment wouldn't be bad, more investment, but it's not critical. We can live and prosper without it. So what will this cost? If Donald Trump or his team thinks that he can buy Russian concessions with, hey, we'll do investments, it's not going to work. You can't scare Russians with war. For God's sakes, we've been at war almost nonstop for the last 1,000 years, from one direction or another. So you can't scare us with war. It never really work. If you come in earnest peace, sure, you'll be given the time of day. You'll be given bread and salt. But everything in Russia. Мы не судим по словам, мы судим по действиям. We don't judge you by your words. We judge you by your actions. So everything runs off of that, and we'll see. We'll see. I mean, you still have a lot of people in the U.S. Congress that want Russia destroyed, brought down, and they don't hide that. So to remind everybody that it's not quite all that rosy and peachy that from the Trump team. There's also a fear about the Trump team of what do they really want from us. Because as Kellogg blumbled through one of his answers, well, Russia has alliances now with North Korea, with Iran, with China, they didn't have earlier. They have to step away from those. Well, no, they're not going to step away from those. And that's the fear right now, too, is that all the U.S. wants is still to destroy Russia, but to pull it first away from China, maybe use it against China, or come after Russia after China's dealt with. The crocodile will eat you last, but it'll still eat you. And that is an actual quite vivid fear of if we stick with the Chinese and the Iranians and so on, and the growing pool, they've got our back, we've got their back. But if we separate, or as the founders of the U.S. said, either we hang together or we all hang separately.
Mute, Alexander. Your mic.
Yeah. So Stanislav, I know we're up against your hard stop. Can I say thanks? We've had lots of technical problems on this live stream, but it's been absolutely fascinating to listen to all that you've had to say. And as I said, you've got that feel for what's going on the front lines and in the rear areas, and also obviously in Moscow itself. And it's been very informative, and welcome to the Duran, and I'm sure we'll be speaking again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stanislav.
I've watched you guys for quite a few years. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you here, and we'll have you on soon again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Cheers.